Hello.
Yo,
How's it going?
good. I'm guessing we flip for sides.
Yep, what's your preference? Do you have a preference?
Do you have a preference? Or
My preference is going to be
You're
Af.
both cowards.
It was going to be Nick, excuse me.
what's your preference?
My preference is Nick.
Okay, that works. My preference was going to be off.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So we don't need to flip?
Nope, no flip.
No, we just figured it out.
Okay.
Leo?
Works for me.
All right, give me a second. I'll be right back.
Sorry, real quick. So to confirm, Joshua is going to be the affirmative. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Okay, cool. We'll see you shortly.
Where's Craig? Craig, you're in charge here. You should be negotiating all of this. You're the chair. Craig, are you here? maybe Craig's not here.
I'm totally not here.
Like, you know,
Where we handled the flip.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
Here's the speech drop. Oh, I think they left to go to the bathroom. That's right.
Hey, Joshua, do you mind telling me what the Af is going to be?
It's the sex workers. I had a different advantage that I just ran the last round. Didn't have time to upload it.
Okay, that's cool.
But it's Joe just saw it. Let me create. Oh, are you good to go?
I'm going to use the restroom real quick, too.
Sure. Paul, are you back?
Dude, I never left. I think it was Craig.
Oh, is it Craig? Craig, are you back?
Josh, is this a mechanical keyboard? Are these MX Blues? What's going on?
It is a mechanical keyboard. It's a Black Widow chroma.
Okay, for sure.
It's very loud.
Yeah, no, I'm all about it, dude. I've got blue switches too.
Nice.
But, it's very distinct.
Yeah. Downside is it's loud. Upside is it's a very enjoyable keyboard.
Perkins, are you here too now?
Never done left.
Never been. See, exactly same deal. Okay, cool.
I think everyone's good to go. I think you get to hear the exact same thing again, Craig.
Also, congrats on making it to finals to both of you, obviously.
Yeah.
Good luck and have fun.
Cheers. Well, me and Paul are excited to see something new, Joshua.
That's true. That's true.
I'm just gonna snooze through this one AC. All right.
That's fine. If you want to just also assume I read all the cards, I would be very ecstatic for that. If ever did I? Yeah, this is my one I see. Okay. I am ready. Here we go. 6 minutes. All right. The USFG through an act of Congress signed by the President should remove the following grounds of inadmissibility for the entrance to the United States for legal permanent residence on the status on the basis of family employment or diversity. One is going to be prostitution under Title 8, Chapter 12, Subchapter 2, Part 2, Section 1182, Subsection 2, Clause 2 of the U.S. Code of Federal Law 2 is public charge restriction on legal immigration under Section 212A4 of the U.S. of the Code of Federal Law. Advantage what is going to be transpired. Great standards of inadmissibility reject prostitution even in cases of violent coercion only as exceptions if it was over 10 years ago, but it does not always get applied. Battlefield 17. The applicant had been convicted 4 times under New York State law for prostitution. The applicant claimed that she was coerced into prostitution. That she was something she was arrested as was not admitted to the record of conviction. The definition of the arrest was not applicable. Did not allow to say why the distinction was or even so they wait did the fund get the okay, conviction under no prior 10 years before the application dates. Not often was the address of should apply in one prostitution case, but not another. Current laws make people of color unfairly suspect of prostitution and actively exclude 80% of churches of POCs who other used to or still engage in prostitution for their monetary needs. This amount of people in this demographic are growing and think short of the one AC makes this violence inevitable. Battlefield 17. The implication of descriptive reinforcement in the short sex work officers on egg, nor the sexual disputes higher. Rates of violence laws disproportionately impact women, transgender women, one of color. The state reflects international trends in sex work and similar trend that women of color routinely sex workers do under and 20 to Latinas in LA, California, found that 80% had traded sex for money, food, or shelter, and supported with 31%. I didn't imagine their sex work is the primary form of employment. More likely to suffer immigration as consequences than white and cisgender women. This display has just been impact on these women because of favor of removing personal issues of the basis and admissible rather than continuing the current practice. The app federally removes inadmissibility on prostitution, which shifts views on prostitution, spills up to legislation. Battlefield 17. Changing the use of prostitution called abortion the basic use of prostitution convictions is based on removal of the what's presented adoption of extra expectation laws. The fact that courts regularly convicted the perpetrators raises a serious question about the benefits of using those convictions in immigration procedures. So would go a long way to promoting justice for vulnerable individuals, particularly women of color and transgender women in the U.S. immigration system. And trans women are deported and face death while being made invisible by Valencia 20. These transgender sexual criminality multiple times after receiving the threats of she did 6 14 months earlier today. United States least under the 38 people were killed after having been deported to the U.S. New has suffered from 2013 to 2019. The totals is much higher than because many homicides are reported. Advantage to disablism. Historical decision-making in immigration has been structured by disablism. The federal church has been the basis tool for exclusion. Ben 10A05. What is the training force of immigration law was the exclusion of disabled people with the idea of legislation under effective immigrants as other initiatives that keep immigrants deemed different from one aspect of the terms what towards increasing sterilization, the unfit anti-gender, interstate eugenics laws. Why does this not solve Montoya Galvinus 310? Teaches that it would refer to clean numbers that are structuring officials only deemed immigrants public churches that they were receiving government cash benefits are all long-term institutionalized regulating the immigration, including banning majority of the purpose that they endanger the greater order of American communities. The assumption that disability entails dependency manifests in the logic of eugenics. This further should show up the undesirable element, one who drains welfare is dependent on society. Page 16. The people remember that there's disabled to preserve the undeserved like to be better today. Official justification was that deputy researchers rather the presumption other evidence to begin in children even adults who died definitely regarded as a professional responsibility for their financial was generous to their political today imply the presumption of never put in the medical justice or today evidence average the children that was disabled were more likely than others to be a defendant and eliminating the public charge restriction on lawful permanent residence stalls possible 95 eligibility definitely public charge policy restrictions on alien action public restrictions on good are good against the policy purpose to eliminate alien action which is falling local permanent residents are permanent immune policy being adopted to answer for their failure and eugenics is justified in the name of a synthesized population entire population push for racial hygiene targeted reproduction while rejecting individuals with disability. Wall Street 06 cost benefit of others to get rid of the certain money to obsess for the welfare system of the federal community dominant disabled people discuss on the images of the racial hygiene go consumption and transfer form directly to my G popular policy to the authority to represent development of individual of the state and deciding along the layer needs to urge people to do that eugenics is ready to individuals in accordance with their wishes and seem to pick apart and parts of the modern identity of the ensure we are witnessing our eugenics at risk. Disableism is the root mechanism of violence historically plays a significant factor over discourse on immigration. Leonard 16. Disabilities and functions in age and all of you said the disability significant factor and 3 great such as such as women's suffrage African American freedom and civil rights restriction of immigration. Framing. The state is inevitable ending other form of engagement to deconstruct social bonds built in best crush worse HornetCup 13. The revolution of better organized the institutions letting them miscreate readers and good methods existing institutions of the research operation of public decisions that have captured the budget each of these secured revolution of projects. The bridges were out among the benefits there were 2 outcomes. The first they were partially little change and all the second the shift to warfare to lead to another prayer. Each except that there is many or more except the prince of being split for the already valued at the least of the money the most written mechanisms of the experience that can use the states to suppress people now or exploit revolution they become hard to lost and extinction level impacts have low probability, especially for structural issues, makes them a prior question to extinction impacts. Jackson 12. You're firmly likely to die from terrorism, terrorism, and Christian silence today. In addition to the lane nuclear property running go to the computer records and more seconds, the third of the chocolate note. Other nations are equally likely to affect the health and well-being of the state. Spends vast amounts of security ministry to have no benefit of the actual risk of the type of the UN and the social property global health restaurants of dollars spend military important ones and security theater cut. Probability on structural issues come first, drop the debate for extinction impacts. They take away the ability to engage in a micro-politically, ethically, Kronovsky 14. Yeah, you should still drop them. There's no warrant, but yeah.
Your Biden doesn't solve card isn't in the doc. Could I have it, please?
Is it not in the, oh, yes.
Yeah, it wasn't in there last time either, but I thought I was like maybe wrong, but no, it's not in there.
What the heck? Where?
I have Biden doesn't solve Montoya Galvez 310 DHS set up to revert the Clinton era rules.
Really? I do not have it. Why do I not have it?
It's probably look at the second card on the Advantage 2. It's like bolded, but I forgot to increase the size.
Oh, that's it. It's not bold. Okay. Okay, it's there. My bad. Sorry.
Are we good for cross?
Yeah, do you need a clean doc or are you good?
I think I'm okay.
Okay, yeah, we're clear for cost.
All right, coolio. Well, just to clarify, you just didn't read the entirety of that last card?
I read the tagline.
Yeah, you read the tag, but I mean, you didn't read the card itself.
No.
Okay, cool. All right, so I want to talk about one of the contentions you make on the disableism advantage. So specifically, trying to find the card, sorry. The Waldschmidt 2006 evidence. Can you summarize that evidence for me?
Sure. Essentially, there's this current by society when they enact these types of policies like the public charge rule, it essentially creates a cost-benefit analysis within the ethics of the state in order to just sort of get rid of disabled people from their calculus and render them disposable for the sake of allowing society to maybe be quote unquote better Obviously, we do not endorse that outlook, but this allows them to be rendered disposable, their deaths enabled, and that creates a sort of eugenics against the disabled because they're allowed to die, not considered part of calculus.
Okay. Okay, sure. That answers my question. Next, can you point me to a single card in the 1AC that says that sex workers, like a single sex worker, has been rejected for the purposes of LPR?
Field 17, the first card. It talks about examples of people being the AAO. It talks about an example of someone that was a sex worker that was sort of rejected initially and then was able because of the tenure access. But like the implication on the second part of it, they're going out there, lots of people excluded. The second Field 17 probably it talks about the inadmissibility in the second half of the tagline. It talks about the favor of removing the basis of inadmissibility. I mean, even if there is currently no one right now, for the future, excluding sex workers is still a bad impact, which means maybe even there are people right now, but even if there wasn't, it doesn't matter. That doesn't excuse having a really fucked up law.
Okay, wait, go back to the Bedingfield 2017 evidence, that first piece of evidence. Where does it say that she was kicked out because of LPR, kicked out in pursuit of LPR?
So that's the inadmissibility status. So the grounds of prostitution. Maybe it doesn't exactly say the LPR, but that's what legal immigration is. It's via legal permanent residency, and the entire U.S. Code of Federal Law has that inadmissibility under sort of legal permanent residence in the INA. That's the sort of Title 8, Chapter 12, Subchapter 2, Part 2, Section 1182. Like,
okay. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just had one more question. I just wanted to ask, do you legalize sex work?
Across the country?
Yeah.
We would argue we lead to via like spillover, but we don't fiat that we legalize sex work.
Okay, cool. And I don't think I need any prep. I'll upload the 1NC, excuse me, and we'll get started. I believe that's the right doc. It should be just one off, and then framework, solvency, the first advantage, or yeah, really, I have a like block labeled sex workers, but that's really just more solvency stuff. So it'd be solvency and then ableism.
1 second, I'm pulling up the doc.
Yeah, for sure. I was gonna wait until everyone was ready.
Cool.
Okay, my opponent good. Judge is good.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. If I don't hear anything from the other two judges, I will just get started unless someone stops me.
Always good.
Cool. Yeah. Ah, yes, I remember now. All right. So first off is the alt indigenous control. Indigenous people should have the only say in who occupies their land. The affirmative enact colonialism out of court in 2019. As historian McCown noted, identifying certain migrants as free and others as indigenous perpetuated exclusionary boundaries that deem certain migrants as desirable for permanent settlement and others as unfit for participation in liberal democratic societies is a distraction to calculate complicity. The issue with arriving on ceded and settling on unceded territories is the fact that custodians of the land have generally had no say. Land place matters to indigenous peoples. This is particularly important given the suggestion by some scholars that decolonization can only occur when the settler demand for indigenous land and vanishing is finally discontinued in all of its forms. Next, colonialism undergirds the violent sexual politics around the globe. Morganson in 2011. The distinction between native and settler informs all power in settler societies and their relations within societies worldwide. Colonial power relations among native and non-native people define the status queer. The imposition of colonial heteropatriarchy relegates native people and all non-native people of color to queer statuses as racialized populations amid colonial efforts to eliminate native nationality and settle native lands. Modern sexuality comes into existence when the heteropatriarchal advancement of white settlers appears to vanquish settler primitivity, which white settlers nevertheless adopted their own history. Next. Colonial land dispossession is genocidal, short in 2016. Those indigenous peoples fighting to regain their lands are fighting for their life as distinct peoples. We can only conclude that genocide is occurring when indigenous peoples who have a spiritual connection to their land are forcibly dispossessed and estranged from their lands. They invariably experience social death and thus genocide. Next. You can skip the Grove 2019 card. I'm not reading that. On the next contention is their epistemology is flawed. Ignore their calls for a technocratic quick fix. We need a radical rethink to create real change. Deloria, 1999. Liberation requires redressing through Western thinking and re-examination of the body. Human knowledge seems abstract in the face of suffering. We assume that we know the structure of reality and must only make minor adjustments to it in order to bring our institutions into line. We feel impelled to change conditions quickly. Numerous examples can be cited to show that our efforts to bring justice have been short-circuited because we failed to consider the framework within which we analyze alternatives and solutions. Example after example could be cited, each justifying the devastating effect of a general attitude toward the world that underlies the Western approach to human knowledge. Next. The alternative is to give control of immigration to indigenous people as governed through their laws, legal traditions, and treaty relations. Body in 2018. Indigenous laws, legal traditions, and treaty relations should serve as sources of authority in immigration policy and discourse. These interventions also limit us whether acknowledgement of the treaty right to be here would merely serve as metaphorical decolonization. Instead, I argued that it might be possible to actually decolonize the treaty right to be here if it led to indigenous self-determination, including fulsome powers to incorporate others, this ability to recenter indigenous legal systems for making and maintaining relations, and thus help to decolonize law. Any permutation acts as metaphorical decolonization. Body in 2018. Non-metaphorical decolonization requires the resurgence of indigenous control over immigration. By decolonization, I mean the repatriation or rematriation of indigenous lands, waters, and life. This resurgence takes place at multiple levels and scales. Additionally, you should adopt an ethic of incommensurability. Any settler moved to innocence should be rejected. Tuck and Yang in 2012. An ethic of incommensurability to contrast reconciliation. Reconciliation by rescuing a settler. Future question: what will decolonization look like? What will be the consequences? Need not, perhaps cannot be answered in order for decolonization to exist as a framework. To fully enact an ethic of incommensurability means relinquishing settler futurity and abandoning the hope that settlers may one day be commensurable in native people. Decolonization is not an and, it's an elsewhere. And finally, the alternative solves the affirmative. Hal Britter in 2017. There's probably no other group with more reason to be wary of immigrants than Native Americans, but we welcome you as we welcome generations of immigrants to these shores. We will be working to marshal the energy of Indian country to fight for a welcoming, humane immigration policy. Now on the framework. We agree with the F's general framework, but you should protect us from the extrapolation that are not immediately obvious and have a generous interpretation. A, we are willing to accept their framework for debatability, which is a concession. B, encourages F's to read vague frameworks to exclude all neg arguments. Next, we claim the same rights of C, cross-ex clarification and the ability to amend arguments. And finally, no new F theory arguments. They set the terms for the debate, and we based our neg strategy on their framework. If they want to exclude other arguments, they should have put them in the 1AC. Now on to solvency. Legal immigration is only a tiny fraction of immigration. Chacon and Chemerinsky in 2020. Although there are usually more than 180 million entries, most of that traffic is by people holding temporary visas. This policy would affect only those immigrants who have been authorized for permanent residency. That involves less than 1 million people. We have to assess their advocacy on the basis of its ability to change the system. Otherwise, it becomes commodified. These two cards work in conjunction with one another. Love in 2020, where activists are allowed to make grand statements of resistance. Ultimately, their ability to confront and change the actual structures of power is inhibited. Commodification is carried out when an activity is generally understood to be disruptive, is characterized as radical, regardless of whether or not it actually challenges the existing power arrangement. The term radical simply becomes a brand that is used to compete for attention without any accountability. Next. Turn. The current system is grounded in white supremacy, ensures the AF can't solve. Irfani in 2020. Excuse me. Reform is not enough because the system is not broken. It's designed to uphold white supremacy. Calls for piecemeal immigration reform have long stalled. Calls for sweeping, meaningful change. Immigration laws and policies are rooted in white supremacy. And finally, on solvency, progressive immigration tinkering is succeeded by harsher enforcement. Dawson, 2020. When we tinker with immigration law and pick some groups to benefit, the groups who remain vulnerable will still drive this massive deportation machine. It's about reimagining what the immigration system could look like. Obama ran a pro-immigrant platform, but also felt the need to achieve immigration reform by improving his administration was going to be tough on bad immigrants, dividing immigrants into good and bad. Let's agencies like ICE get away with constantly expanding their budgets and violent tactics. Now, additionally, the app doesn't solve. It doesn't legalize sex work. Their examples about harassment focus mainly on police harassing sex workers. Next, they don't solve the problem, which is criminalization of sex work. Insight in 2021. Since sex work is criminalized and highly stigmatized, individual sex workers and organizations are exposed to high levels of harassment and violence by law enforcement agents. Any participation in sex work entails a life on the margins. And next, colonialism is the root cause of sexual violence and discrimination. The alternative is the key way to solve. Now go to ableism. Biden stopped Trump's interpretation of public charge, and it was struck down by the court anyhow. Montoya Galvez in 2021. The Biden administration stopped enforcing the 2019 public charge restrictions on green cards following the reinstatement of a federal court order blocking the Trump-era policy. Next, extremely unlikely that anyone will be rejected based on the public charge rule as it exists. Boundless in 2021. Very few immigrants have been denied green cards on public charge grounds. First, Congress has already barred most immigrants using welfare. Second, Congress still requires that most green card applicants have a financial sponsor who can demonstrate sufficient income to prevent future dependency. Next, the affirmative's infringement on indigenous land is ableist. Disability studies need to come first in order to come to terms with settler colonialism. It is foundational to the current system of violence. Jaffe and John in 2018. Recent disability subject scholarship responds to critiques by addressing the enmeshment of disability oppression with settler colonialism narratives of the field that, adding later analysis of settler colonialism, preserve the very structure they aim to challenge. This paper argues that the disablement of the earth defined as settler colonial practices of land theft is inextricable from the displacement of indigenous ontology bodies and communities. This disablement of land body as a tactic of settler colonialism has persisted for centuries and takes various forms. Indigenous ontology challenges disability theory at the epistemological level by rejecting the taken for granted dualism between the environment, space, and disabled human bodies with settler disability studies. Much of what is recognized as disability studies scholarship is produced by non-indigenous people within settler colonial states. Challenging environmental racism and disablement of land intrinsic features of settler coloniality is part of the parcel of disability justice. And I won't read that last card.
What didn't you read? Just so I can.
Just the very last card. The U.S. immigration system is structurally ableist, the one that starts as that.
Okay.
Yeah, I read everything else.
Cool. And then you cut one of the indigenous cards on the.
Yeah, I cut the Grove 19 evidence, which is like colonialism is implicated in a variety of like existential impacts.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't read an existential impact. So 3 minutes. Cross starting now. On the who does the alt?
The United States federal government, I guess.
Can the alt result in the affirmative? The alt, the USFG does the alt?
Yes, yeah.
Who's the USFG?
The United States federal government.
So you fiat the USFG gives it to natives and adopts an ethic.
I fiat that the United States federal government seized control of immigration.
And how is that different from them currently controlling immigration?
They cede control. It's the exact opposite.
Oh, they cede control. Okay.
Yeah. My bad.
The status of the alt?
Oh, it's unconditional.
Okay. That was probably a good choice for Paul. On your alt solves the AF, the Halberger card. This is very important. Where at all does it say it results in the very specific public charge rule? It just seems like someone representative from one Native American nation saying, yeah, maybe we welcome people. How does that at all representative of the hundreds of tribes of Native Americans across?
Right. So the United States immigration system is abolished. And what this card serves to do is just like reinforces the idea or the notion that indigenous peoples would foster a humane immigration policy, which would probably not exclude sex workers.
But you don't fiat that they do it.
The alt is not just the affirmative.
So you are fiating that we cede control, not that they include the public charge.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's an argument we're gonna make. We're not fiating.
You're gonna make the argument that all native tribes will adopt this ethic of this one Halberger person.
Yes.
Okay. What's incommensurability?
Incommensurability is
sorry. I have a hard time reading.
Yeah, no, you're good. Do you still need me to explain it? You want me to explain it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's effectively just any attempt by settlers to move to innocence or essentially align themselves in the same direction as like anti-colonial stances when that's not foregrounded in discussions of advocacies.
Okay. So do you only give control of the immigration system to indigenous people?
Yeah, that's the alt, but the end of that alt is specific about how this helps to decolonize law as a whole, and this is to the end of indigenous resurgence as a whole.
So just the legal system. So you're not decol. You don't give the land back.
Not at first. Like that's not what the alt does.
Okay.
The alt is a necessary first step to doing that.
Okay. I guess there's 5 seconds. I don't think it'd make a difference. I'm gonna start taking rolling prep. We're gonna figure out how that goes. All right, starting time now. So I have 220 used. I am going to upload the doc. One AR. Finals. Is 6 minutes. Is everyone?
Can you give me a second to download? Sorry.
Oh yeah, that was intense.
Do you have an order for us?
Yeah, the F, and then the criticism, probably top down. It'll depend on time. Worst case, it'll go framing, then the alt, then the links after. Is everyone ready?
Oh yeah, I'm ready. Sorry.
I might have stand the HornetCup card. I'm still deciding. When I start an analytic, I'll just say analytic. All right. Extend advantage 1. Anything short of countering state-sanctioned violence strategies that enables terrorist violence and death to occur, that this death and destroys value life for these individuals. Resolve this by allowing them to get legal permanent residence and enter the U.S. to escape violence, and by spotlighting the issue leading to further spillover and change. Extend advantage 2. The public charge rule has been a driving force of exclusion nearly 150 years, and Biden isn't doing shit, just making policies that have less appearance of violence while forwarding eugenics logic to render disabled bodies disposable. Infinite magnitude impact that outweighs on probability and time. For instance, it's happening right now. Disableism also forms the mechanism for violence with regard to immigration. We solve this by removing their ability to enact violence, letting them in, but also forcing policymakers to answer their crimes for spilling over to other disabled policies. Let's go to their solvency arguments. They say legal immigration is only a tiny fraction of immigration. 1, they drop these spill-up arguments on both the Bettenfield 17 we lead to letter policies later on, as well as the forcing policymakers on this disableism advantage, allowing a sort of change overall, which takes out your, even if you do that, this is not trickle terminal solvency deficit, which means he sort of you is try right for the affirmative 3 is even if it does trigger a terminal solvency deficit, worst case you vote out on presumption, you ready on conditional also the permanent proof flips. You have says we have the advocacy on the basis of capital links to the system. Cross apply all their spillover arguments on how it forces policymakers to look inwards and create a sort of future steps for change later on. You say current system is grounded on white supremacy. That is uniqueness for status quo. Uniqueness controls the direction of the links, which means it's time for the affirmative. You've also dropped large portions of the changing of people's views on the Bettenfield 17 second card, as well as the forcing people to look inward. We challenge the rhetoric of eugenics in order to resolve it in the first place. They say progressive immigration integrity is succeeded by harsher enforcement. 1 is going to be the harsher enforcement right now is death. You have not had a sort of uniqueness. 2 is going to be these spill-up arguments, means the pill-up policymakers, they look internally in order to change harsher enforcement. It also leads to a sort of rhetorical change in the way in which we simply discuss it, which means they face backlash against these sort of immigration reform that solves your links. Or now worse, it means it's try or die for the affirmative because they're already dying and subject to infinite violence right now, which means it doesn't take it out. They say they don't legalize sex work. 1, classify the spillover. 2, it's going to be even if we don't legalize, we still prevent some people from dying, and this doesn't take out disableism. They say the problem of criminalization, cross apply the criminalization. Colonialism is not reverse causal, even if it's root causal, i.e. you cannot resolve the colonial mindset of people. That about 2 is going to be the permutation shields. The links to the 3 is going to be we still can enact material change. This is going to be on the framing, but we'll do it now first. You can have a good bad epistemology and good policy. The bad epistemology of sort of wanting sort of a capitalism and legalism within, but still passing the 13th Amendment was able to sort of reduce the level of slavery. Or Brown v. Board engaged these sort of ethic of militarism in the way it was enforced, but it still allowed for increasing education. More African Americans too. Hey, so can you say you shot the interpretation? Spillover takes the out, doesn't take out sex workers. Also, Biden's going to be able to appoint new core justices way on the federal bench, which means it can override this. So when he does it, and sort of congressional legislation, there was an executive order before, which means we resolve it. They say anyone will be rejected. That doesn't mean there's still ethics are bad. The indigenous lands argument, one, we resolve it. We still have a material change. Two is going to be you can still have the ability to resolve it. Three is going to be you don't resolve settler colonialism. Four is we still lead into materialism. Five is this doesn't take out sex workers. The criticism. One is going to be gains are limited, but there's still lengths and denouncing actions because we are still the language cows go lazy. Noise cows at 16. Colonialism interchange communities to be uniquely positioned for the virus. We must hold deficit resilience. Having deficit the president conditions have the president victory policy replaced with right land jurisdictions offers gains limited still gains. Any reader knows that U.S. built on stolen independence opposition to impress understand particular the trajectory of the political Jew is going to be framing colonialism through the lens of absolute decor consumer ability, mental ability, mixing just liberation, impossible setting the terms of victory is all or nothing pessimism, actively reifies settler dominance. Bridge 18. Where it is a structural perspective closed, it's political transformation, decolonization, as the only solution is that I can't develop decolonization, which is the faithful data patterns, run out, represented the settle, college read into the situation or context is not the same, help a person liberated for you to cycle, as it one story to the other victory, total for the anti, colonial struggle must be became settler, indigenous relation, go, together, protest must be maintained, what are the struggle against their faith, it was reified, etc., hello, ontology, risk, conditions, heterogeneity, agency, totalizing logic, the possibility of counter publics, cut the Gordon 15 card might come back for it. You can cross about the epistemology insights and a lot of the insights in the first place, but also relink. They're also probably quoted by settler colonial policy if everything is, which means the only thing you can adapt is material change, and also insights their epistemology know whether all can solve in the first place, which means that you can only take the material action of the app. Go to the alt. One is going to be a real link. They aren't full decall. They are metaphorization of decall the gift. Native people's appeasement, allowing them to go on continuing this settler structure while ceding part of the legal system in the first place, which means they only subjectify it for the ballot crossplay that disableism controls the mechanism of your impacts. And again, you don't resolve these sort of affirmative. Your time, there's a time frame differential. We have indicted your all and your cards size one person in the vague conceptions, probably towers act an essentialism, saying all of the people to think the same relate to you. Perm do both, perm do double by neither the alt is able to overcome the exception of the app and shield us from all of your links because their term is a test of total competition. They always doomed to fail because they couldn't overcome the massive set of colonial structures of the affirmative. Two is going to be sort of the alternative cannot solve without it, and the entire app is a net benefit. The relinks probably also implicate the permutation shields the link. I will send you.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it cleaned up.
Okay.
Okay. Let me download that clean doc and then I'll start prep. Okay, it's up and I'm starting prep now. Okay, that's time. And I will upload my doc now. Recent 1NR. Okay. Yeah, and then I'll do work on the line by line on the K proper or let me give the order. That should make things pretty clear. Okay, so the order is going to be the plan. Yeah, I'm just going to talk about solvency quickly before I go on to the K. And in talking about the K, I'm going to talk about how it outweighs case and then that sort of thing. Make those sorts of arguments. Okay, is everyone ready?
No. What the heck is your roadmap again? I just heard like I'm gonna kind of talk about solvency and then maybe the K. Like
solvency framework and then K is.
Thank you. Cool. I'm just trying to get my sheets in order, man. All right. Thanks.
Everyone good? No? Cool. Then let's get started. Okay, first of all, my opponent, in responding to some of these solvency arguments, says that we dropped the spill-up arguments and there's no terminal solvency defense. The spill-up arguments are terrible. There's no gut check this argument. There's no chance that Congress legalizes sex work, even if with the induction of the plan. Like, there's absolutely no way that happens with the current composition of Congress and the current composition or the current landscape of United States politics. But additionally, extend my turn that the current system is grounded in white supremacy, and this means that the AF can't solve. There is no real answer here. There's just a blippy analytic and cross application of other analytics for other responses to arguments. But this argument means that this argument is a terminal solvency takeout. It means that the only argument here is just like the AF solves, but that's not true. What the argument is that there is white supremacy that extends beyond the scope of solvency that just removing the prostitution and public charge and admissibility standards can solve. So that means that the K is the only option to solve for all of the white supremacy in the immigration system by abolishing it in the debate. Even if you don't buy the story of the K, and even if you think that presumption flips AF, the K is still the only opportunity to solve, like the only chance to solve for all of the white supremacy. And this also turns all of the affirmative impacts, because white supremacy and settler colonialism are inextricably linked, and they can't solve any of their advantages without solving for it. So now on to some of the framework arguments, or the framework arguments that were made. So first of all, they say that you can have a good policy but bad epistemology. One, this is not true. The policy and epistemology, or epistemology and action, is inextricably linked. If you have a bad epistemology and we prove that you do, that's a reason to reject the policy that is generated by it. Additionally, my opponent says that if you're right, my epistemology is flawed too. That's not true. That's not true because, one, we read indigenous authors, and the second, our form of knowledge production is not predicated or rooted in settler colonialism. Like, that argument doesn't make any sense. Now, we'll talk about the K proper. And first, I'm going to start with the permutations. One, decolonization must come first. Attempts to insert it in other political movements fail. Settlers will always prioritize other efforts. The permutation is vague and unexplained. All of them re-articulated in their final speech. Doing both just means their advocacy and ours happening at the same time. This is the status quo where indigenous movements are sidelined. The 1AC should have been the permutation. We provide evidence that decolonization should be foregrounded in a discussion of immigration. They chose an advocacy unbounded by the resolution, or they chose an advocacy that just makes the deliberate choice coming out of the 1AC to exclude a discussion of colonialism and how and a hybrid vision of how our advocacies can work together. The permutations only make sense if they can provide a justification for not doing the permutation in the 1AC. And additionally, I'm going to read this Morganson evidence. First, the 1AC's failure to provide an analysis of settler colonialism isn't an absence to be filled, but a constitutive act that reinforces colonialism. Morganson in 2011. Settler colonialism is present precisely when it appears not to be narrating native peoples as absent, does not erase them so much as produce knowledge about them has necessarily disappeared. The absence of native people in a story tells a story of the settler colonial conditions. And next, they provide an overdetermined account of settler power in most of their substantive claims and answering back our evidence that moves to erase indigenous being. Morganson in 2011. Settler colonialism's inherent relationality continually evokes interdependence, not independence, whether that to which it relates seems present or absent in the imagination or in interactions with those who survive attempted erasure. As settler colonialism cannot create totalizing forms of power to wholly produce native peoples as constructs of a colonial gaze or as mere reinterpreters of colonial ideas about themselves. A perception that this is all that is possible is the logic of elimination at work, but it remains naturalized in the settler academy. Both of these evidence contentions serve as offense against the vast majority of their claims. Additionally, extend my ethical incommensurability argument, which checks back against the arguments that one that gains are limited, but they are still gains. First, denouncing action because we are on stolen land is lazy. That's just one part of the link. The other part of the link is, so inviting people to land that isn't yours is a part of the story of the cave. But additionally, colonial land dispossession in its entirety is genocidal. This turns the affirmative structural violence impacts. And additionally, their epistemology is what is flawed. They think that just by this fix to immigration, by removing these inadmissibility standards, we solve for all of these cascading effects of structural violence. But that's not true. You need a radical rethink to create real change. My Deloria 1999 evidence is really good about how most of our efforts to change conditions quickly and bring our institutions into line are flawed because we are making assumptions about the structure of reality and the structure of what is necessary. So even if you don't buy the alternative, the framework is a reason to it operates as a turn to the affirmative. That means there's a functional deficit in solvency because they're not interrogating the framework within which we analyze alternatives and solutions. Next, the next argument that's made is that framing settler colonialism through totalizing lens makes indigenous liberation impossible because it's all or nothing. It is. This is a blatant attempt at incommensurability or commensurability. So extend that you should reject this. Extend that you should reject this and extend my perm preempt. Additionally, extend that the F's infringement on indigenous land is ableist if they link to the framework. And additionally, if you buy the case turn, you vote for the K automatically.
$135 crap now. No new doc. The order is going to be the affirmative, the epistemology stuff, the relinks, and the perm. And I guess the alt, some of the structural stuff maybe. We'll see. I'll signpost, try and signpost a little better when I get to the criticism. Everyone ready?
I'm good when you are.
Either vote affirmative on the case outweighs in the permutation, or vote affirmative on the relinks that go cold conceded, and they have dropped that relinks outweigh links. The logic of intentionality. You knew what colonial was and actively engaged in. That is why murder is worse than manslaughter. Let's go to the first arguments on the case. They say we don't legalize the section. They've dropped all these sort of spill up arguments that we give as it creates a pathway for things. Two is maybe we don't legalize all, but we still allow some people to come in. This isn't a terminal solvency deficit. The people are dying. Three is going to be even if white supremacy codes it. We break down the current coding of white supremacy. At worst, these are deficits. They don't take out our affirmative. They have also dropped that worst case. If they do, they presumption flows out. You probably won't vote on this, Justin, but Paul might, sort of, because you've taken on the burden of proof with by engaging in unconditional advocacy. They say gut check. This would be a blatant judge intervention. They provide no explanation. The gut checking is not substituting for not deciding when to grapple with an argument. Two is going to be additionally, they've brought the forced policymakers to look inward. That is the carded evidence you can look to on the sort of second advantage. That means we lead to more policies against disableism to resolve later on, which solves infinite violence, some death. We probably have a risk of half. They don't take it out. Go to the epistemology. They've dropped his good policy, bad epistemology. They say they just assert that if your epistemology is bad, it sort of proves you reject the policy. No, under that logic, you would reject the creation of the 13th Amendment and Brown v. Board. We provide two examples of where you could have good, valid policy and bad epistemology, even though they were based on things like legalism, ancestor, colonialism, and militarism. They still attack material change, which means you don't reject our policy at face. It probably also indicts your sort of relicts. It probably means a lot of the epistemology game is probably a lot of bullshit, which means you can only look to the material action. They affirmative engages the material action in order to resolve it, which means they do not get access to the frame out in the first place. But here is where it becomes devastating. You can extend across both relicts on the alternative. One is going to be they relict by essentializing all indigenous nations as on the altar of the outclave as a sort of engaging the same type of policy, and they're not a full decolonization. They're just giving control of the sort of legal system right now and saying, cool, you can have some of this, but that doesn't decolonize. It puts it later on. These go dropped, and you have dropped relinks, outweigh links, but it also proves the burn to both is true. It triggers the double bind. You have dropped it. It means they cannot solve the alternative, that they can't overcome the affirmed terminal solvency deficit, the all, which means to try or tie for the app because they have not extended all solves the app, and it doesn't chew. It also means they can include it, which overcomes the permutation. They say decall minor to work over across the line. They're not decall. They say rearticulating the first speech. The perm shield link takes that all. Also, the relay probably indicates you can overcome it. The relinks also outweigh it. They're cold conceded, so they outweigh on strength of link. There's some mitigation on theirs. They relink. They're still colonial. We solve our out. They don't solve their out. Perm's better.
Dope.
Good debate.
Good debate. No disclosure for finals, right?
Yeah, good debate. No disclosure for finals. So wonderful job. Another round of applause. I know Craig wants to talk about the round. I can see it on his face.
I fucking love Jody Croft.
For real, y'all deserve it. But I'll drop my email in the ballot if you wanted to actually talk more sometime later.
Cool.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you can always find me on Facebook. You can even put me and Paul in a group chat. We'll probably both talk to you.
It's good. Thank you. Good debate. Always a pleasure. Peace.
Yeah, cheers. Wonderful debate. I guess we can stick around and talk after our decision, I suppose. But I mean, unless we're still being streamed. Yeah.
Probably being streamed, but
Yeah, I think that was our streaming leaving. Let me just check with Jared.
Yeah, pretty sure
I
it
guess
was
we
as
can
well.
tell each other.